Hello and welcome to this new episode of Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers podcast. So, I want to ask you, have you ever been confused by the fact that your mother fits in with a narcissistic mother description and yet she seems to have empathy, some kind of empathy? Have you ever felt her empathy manifest somewhat out of place when it's directed at you? Like she seems to have it misplaced. She seems to want to console you and comfort you when you don't need it, and the other way around, when you do need it, that empathy seems gone all of a sudden. Have you ever been in that situation? Have you ever wondered, can a narcissistic mother actually have empathy? So today we're going to talk about this, and we're going to clarify this a little bit. A while ago, I received an email from a listener saying that she resonated with the fact that her mother is a narcissist, up to the fact that a characteristic of narcissism is the lack of empathy. She felt that her mother has a lot of empathy, in fact, manifested in how she's often speaking about how bad she feels about others in difficult situations. But then the listener went on saying how she noticed that her mother's empathy towards her is often misplaced, meaning the mother would try to soothe her when there's actually no upset in the daughter whatsoever, and she would ignore her when there would be a true need to be comforted. She found all of this quite confusing, and I get it. So if you have been in this situation, if you've answered yes to the questions I've asked at the beginning of the episode, and you are confused about this, I get that. I've had confusion on this topic too, as my mother's expressions of empathy misled me for a long time in thinking she actually cared for others truly, and that she was capable of feeling for others deeply, marking her as not really a narcissist, although all the other aspects of it would match the description. And I can say that I have observed versions of this in other members of my family who I now know to be narcissistic too. So this can be quite confusing. And the question is, can a narcissistic mother have empathy? So to answer this, we need to first understand what empathy is. And we might all have concepts and ideas about what it is. Maybe you've heard something been said about it. There's a lot of content out there. And so we all have a little bit of an idea. But here, my intention is to make it as clear as possible so that we're all on the same page as to what we're actually talking about when we're mentioning empathy. So the definition of empathy is the action of understanding, being aware of, being sensitive to, and vicariously experiencing the feelings, thoughts, and experiences of another. There are three main kinds of empathy: cognitive, emotional, and compassionate. And let's have a look about what these three types of empathy mean, okay? Because that's where all of this will become more and more clear. So cognitive empathy is when there is an intellectual understanding of another's person, feelings and emotions, but there's no emotions being stirred within. It stops at a mind level and it doesn't go down to the heart feeling level at all. So you can be in front of someone that is telling you that they're suffering, that they're feeling grief, that they're sad or whatever, they're upset. And you may say, oh, I get where you're coming from. Yeah, I get that would upset you. But then you go on checking on your phone or whatever, because you're actually not affected. You're not feeling for them. You get an intellectual understanding. Okay, so that's the cognitive empathy. A person with emotional empathy, instead, will go beyond that and identify with the emotions of another, going as far as feeling them themselves. For example, seeing someone crying, maybe from the loss of a dear one, will bring on tears in the observer, in the person that is feeling the empathy in the moment. So that person that is observing will feel the grief too. So it goes, you can see how this goes beyond just the intellectual understanding. You would understand that someone losing someone dear might feel grief. And that kind of makes logical sense. But that's it. Then you keep walking and you do your own things. When you have emotional empathy, you actually feel that grief. You're feeling what that person is feeling in the moment. This can branch out in what is called somatic empathy, when the person also has a physical response to what someone else is experiencing. Like, for example, if you're seeing someone getting very panicky, very anxious, you can also experience it physically, like you could get sweaty hands yourself, or a tight stomach, or something like that. A person with compassionate empathy, on top of feeling the feelings of another, will also want to take action to help and make the situation better. So going back to that example of seeing someone feeling grief for the loss of someone dear, someone with compassionate empathy will want to know what she can do to help. Like, what can I do to support you? I feel what you're feeling. I understand it intellectually. I feel it in my body and I feel it in my own emotions. And now I also want to know, what can I do to support you in what you're going through? With all that said, a narcissist only has access to cognitive empathy. So going back to the definition of empathy we mentioned earlier, a narcissist goes as far as the intellectual understanding and is unable for the rest. So the being aware, the being sensitive, the experiencing the feelings of another, that's not part of a narcissist's skill set. Why? Why is that? But that's a big conversation. I mean, we could talk about all the reasons why that happens. There's research, there's lots of different point of views actually, and opinions and theories on why that is. Just to keep it really simple, more than likely a narcissist has not been brought up in the conditions to develop empathy. Empathy can be developed. It's not something that we're just born with or without and then that's it. We have a certain predisposition to it, and then we develop and learn it as we go along. It's part of that emotional intelligence that is learned from your parents when you're small, baby and a child, and then you keep developing it. But if there's some experiences early on that stops this development, then you grow up without it. And so, like, that is more than likely what happens to a narcissist, like experiencing trauma in childhood, or not having parents that supported the development of such skill set, such empathy. So the empathy a narcissistic mother has is limited to cognitive empathy. It is limited to an intellectual understanding at best of times. Sometimes there isn't even that, but like that's the maximum amount of empathy that a narcissistic mother can actually feel. But what about the times that you might have seen your mother getting truly upset over something that happened to another, and she seems like she's feeling? Why did she seem to fully feel for someone and their situation? So if we said that she can't, how is that possible? From the outside, it may look as if she was truly feeling for the person, but what is actually going on inside? Okay, so having only access to cognitive empathy at best, what she's feeling in those moments is her own discomfort. So not the feelings of the other person involved, but her own discomfort. What she feels is her own discomfort at observing someone being in whatever emotional state they are. This may trigger the deep shame that a narcissistic mother actually carries buried inside, which she will do anything not to feel, or even get close to acknowledge to herself, never mind to others, and she will do whatever she needs to put an end to her own discomfort. A narcissist and the same goes for a narcissistic mother, is not truly in tune with the needs of another, but only with their own needs. They're only in tune with their own needs. A narcissistic mother is not in tune with the needs of her own child. So this will cause the mother to try and soothe, to go back to what the email said and the questions at the beginning. The fact that the narcissistic mother is not in tune with the needs of her own child will cause the mother to try and soothe or help when the child's actually fine and there's no need. And that happens if the situation has triggered some discomfort in the mother herself. This is something that I definitely have observed quite often. I have observed it also in my own experience at times, as both as a daughter and then as a mother, trying to figure out how to break the patterns of the behavior that I was carrying on from that my mother passed on to me. But like seeing a child, I can speak for myself, seeing my child in a situation where my child is actually extremely comfortable, but there's like this shame being triggered that if I allowed that, then I'm not a good mother, and then going and like trying to soothe and do whatever when the child was actually fine. There was no need for that. And now on reflection, I can see that, but sometimes that happens. So that's an example of the shame inside being triggered, and then that going into actually action of soothing when there's no need. For example, this is something that could have happened to you, maybe feel into it, but you could do or say something in front of others that may trigger embarrassment for your mother. She could try to console you and sort of say, oh, I'm so sorry you said you embarrassed yourself like that. Even when you were not embarrassed at all, actually. You were totally fine with what you said, but she was embarrassed. But she comes to you to try and console you afterwards. Or maybe this could be like before you appear in public somehow. She could be treating you and try to comfort you as if you were scared of it, like, when in fact she's the one that is feeling triggered and scared. This could go as far as to plant seeds of feelings in you, because if you are not actually worried or scared, or maybe you weren't embarrassed at all of what you just said, but she's going at it, consoling you or trying to comfort you as if you were, this could also make you start feeling that maybe there was a reason to be embarrassed, maybe there is a reason to be scared. Otherwise she wouldn't behave like that. And then when this is repeatedly done, especially to a child developing confidence, this can cause like a lot of insecurity in the child to start growing and the confidence to diminish. Or maybe if she gets triggered by something that someone said to you, she could make a thing of it and trying to soothe you or talk about it with you, when whatever was said actually didn't affect you at all, and it was all in her that the triggering happened again. And that can start planting seeds of doubt in your own mind, and actually then on the long run that can even cause issues in relationships that you might have with others when she behaves like that all the time, because you may start feeling, okay, if she's that upset and she's trying to comfort me over something that was said that I didn't think was insulting or whatever, maybe it was insulting, so maybe there is something there, and you start thinking that and you start going down that line. So that's just a little bit of a tangent, but to show how this kind of fake sort of empathy that seems to be shown at times and to manifest, and that can create confusion when we believe that our mothers are actually feeling empathy for real. That can create a lot of confusion then in how we see the world, and it can get complex to understand the difference. So to clarify that empathy is actually not empathy, but it's just that she's feeling a discomfort inside of herself, and she's trying to soothe that by whatever way that is going to help her not feeling the discomfort that she's feeling. She doesn't actually really care or isn't tuned at all into what you are or are not feeling. So on the other hand, when you are truly hurt or upset by something, if this has not triggered discomfort in her, she may very well ignore it, dismiss it completely, or treat your feelings as an inconvenience because she's fine. If anything, you feeling upset could trigger her discomfort. So she doesn't want to go there. She could minimize it and say to you that maybe she gets it. She could go as far and say that she gets it, but that it's time to get over it. That you're too sensitive and making a thing of something that is nothing really, and that if she was you, she would not feel a thing. And that is actually true, because she doesn't. That situation isn't triggering her, so she wouldn't feel a thing. And so because she doesn't have empathy, she can't feel what you're feeling. She doesn't feel a thing for you feeling upset. It becomes an inconvenience for her. Also, it is important to remember that a narcissistic mother loves to talk about other people's problem as a way to get attention on herself. So that part of the email, when the listener was saying, oh, I think my mother has empathy because she speaks about other people and how she feels about other people having problems, that's a way to get attention on herself, especially if she can either make the story somehow about herself, for example, telling you how much she's suffering for what is happening to whoever, how much that is affecting her because she has such a good heart, or so on and so forth, or if telling such a story makes her look good around others, like if she has done or said something to the person in question that would have warned them, or that would have helped them if they only had listened to her, or maybe she went as far as helping and she has sorted the entire situation for them, and now she can make the story about how brilliant her help was. So it's always, when there's speaking about others' problems, if you listen carefully and you really just go through the layers, it goes back to them. It always brings it back to make the story about themselves. It's not really about truly compassionately feeling into what the other person is experiencing. The email also mentioned how the mother has accused the daughter to have no empathy. This was another part of the email, and she went and this went on all the way to cause the daughter to feeling that she might actually be the one being narcissistic after her mother has accused her of not having empathy. And now I can't obviously speak specifically for this case, as it was a very short email, and I don't know all the specifics. But in general, I can say that this is what can be defined as gaslighting. Okay, a narcissistic mother will never admit to not having empathy, as they do not admit to anything that could make them appear faulty or in the wrong or bad in any ways. And she has no awareness that she actually lacks empathy. She is convinced that what she feels is really being sensitive towards others, not realizing it is a self-absorbed way of going on about it. So she won't admit any of that. So she will do or say anything to deny that when confronted, going as far as to turn the conversation around, making you the problem and not her, like in this example. So what are you saying, that I don't have empathy? Well, by saying that, you're showing me that you don't have empathy. How could you say that about me? Can you see how invested I am in what other people are feeling and their troubles, how much I suffer when this happens? And you have no heart if you're coming to me telling me such a thing. So you are the one with no empathy. You are the narcissist. And if you're listening to that, if you've been conditioned by your narcissistic mother to believe what she says and listen to that all the time, this is what gaslighting is about. You might actually start feeling that might be true, and you might start questioning, God, am I a narcissist? Do I lack empathy, and all of that, and start getting very confused. So that's why it's really important understanding what's going on really. What is that sort of apparent empathy that a narcissistic mother may show sometimes? So to understand if your mother has more than cognitive empathy, because you could still be in the doubt, and that's okay. That's totally okay. And also, I just want to always remind that we're talking about narcissistic mothers, and there's a lot of uh, shades to this. It's not like you're either a narcissist or you're not. Some have like full on narcissistic expressions in their behavior, and it's very strong and it's very obvious. And then there's others that have had some traits of it. So again, there's lots of shades to this. And so again, you may notice that you could be listening to this and be 100% sure that your narcissistic mother has absolutely zero empathy. You've seen it, like she can't feel anything. She's like a bloody rock, like nothing gets in there. Her heart is made of stone. Okay. But you could be listening to this and go, well, actually, there are so many situations where I could be in doubt, and it seems like she does have empathy. So feel into that. Feel into that. Don't take my word for it ever. Always feel into your own situation. And if those manifestations of empathy that you see in your mother are actually fine, as in they don't cause you any confusion, they don't cause you any trouble, they don't make you feel bad at all, they don't come back at you in some kind of way, like as we mentioned, gaslighting or this misplaced comforting that causes you confusion or anything like that, then that's okay. I mean, there's no need to go exploring that further. But if it is causing you confusion, if it is causing you some kind of hurt, if you are beginning to question yourself, and if you are feeling that all of this misplaced comforting or not comforting or ignoring or of your feelings at some points, and then other times just all being all about your feelings that your mother does is causing you confusion and hurt, then it's worth exploring, feeling into it, and understanding better. So observe your mother behavior to understand this better in your mother. Observe her behavior for these key signs. First of all, is she talking about how much she feels for others to get attention on her in some way? Feel into it. When she's talking about how much she feels for others, how is that conversation going? Is it always going back to her somehow? Is it one of those things that you're at a family dinner, and because she's talking about how she's feeling for others, the entire conversation is monopolized by her all the time? So she seems like being really nice. She seems like she's talking about others, but that's like that conversation went on for an hour and no one was able to open their mouth. She's the only one talking. Just that's to give you an example. Keep an eye out for that. Number 2, when she goes to help, is the help she gives actually in tune with the other person? Can you see that you're observing that from the outside? Can you actually see that her action to help, comfort, or support is or is not really what the receiver in this situation needs in the moment? Point number 3, does she go in with a fixing energy? And the fixing energy, it's sort of an extension of point number 2. Fixing energy is not in tune with what someone actually needs. For example, you might be feeling, so if that was you might just feel the need to be listened, and that's it. You don't actually feel the need to someone give you advices or solutions or opinions. You just have a moment where you need to rant about something that is being inside of you for a while, and you just need to be listened. And yet what you're getting is you're not even able to get out 3 or 4 words, and there's like solutions being thrown at you, or what you should do or what you shouldn't be doing, and such like that. That's a fixing energy, and that can feel very intruding in your space. That can feel very hurtful. That can make you feel very much like you're too sensitive or you're incapable of finding solutions by yourself, and it's not a nice energy. So you'll feel it. That's not a nice energy. So to help to make something better for someone is very different than fixing, because you're faulty, broken, or incapable. So fixing energy kind of leaves you with this feeling that you're either faulty, broken, or incapable, where trying to actually genuinely want to make it better for someone usually starts with a question. Rather than an affirmation, it starts with a question: how can I support you in this? Giving you the option to choose and feel into what you would feel the need for in the moment, rather than being told what you should do, shouldn't do, and such and such. So that's a key sign of just a cognitive empathy at best, when it's that fixing energy that comes from cognitive empathy. And a person that has emotional empathy and compassionate empathy will never go in with a fixing energy, because they're feeling what you're feeling, so they're able to really feel for you, and so they're really kind of able to know, well, if I was in that situation, I would love to be supported by being asked how I would love to be supported. So they get that, where someone with just cognitive empathy won't get that. And the fourth thing to look out for is when she helps and she actually gets it right. Because in this behavior, in this weird sort of feeling their own discomfort first instead of the others and blah blah blah, sometimes they're actually getting it right. Sometimes what they do to help actually matches what the person needed, and so they get it right. So when she helps and she gets it right, does she go on and on telling how she was able to help? Does she make it all about her? Or maybe she says that if it hadn't been for her, like things would have been so much worse. So that, you know, like that the thing that she's done, if it hasn't been for her, if it hadn't been for her advice, if it hadn't been for her support, that this other person would have been in a much worse situation, and it's all about her. So if she helps and she gets it right, does she make it again, yet again, all about herself? And again, monopolizes conversation, and she just has to ring you to let you know how brilliant she's done in the way she helped, and blah blah blah. So those are signs to look out for, to really see, is it really, 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 truly empathy, like the emotional, compassionate empathy that your mother is feeling, or not? Bottom line is that a narcissistic mother behavior is always driven by her own needs, and never truly by the needs of the other person involved. This is subconscious, of course, and when confronted, she will deny that, or as we said, react badly, turn the conversation around, gaslight you into feeling that it's your problem and not hers, and that you're the problem. But she won't admit to it, so there's no point. And no matter how good she is at making it appear as a genuine feeling or as selfless, her behavior is actually always selfish in some way. It's her own triggering that she's trying to cover up, is her own shame that she's trying not to feel, it's her own discomfort that she's trying to put an end to, not the one of the other. I will follow this episode in the coming weeks with related episodes, because this is a big topic, and about how a narcissistic mother can actually weaponize cognitive empathy to manipulate. So that's another episode. But if you've experienced that, if you have experienced that your mother actually, with this weird sort of empathy that you've seen she might have, that then things kind of get back to you in some way, and that she uses details that she collects during these moments when she's sort of pretending, at this point we can say that, to display empathy, and she turns those details against you. If you've been in that situation, you know what I'm talking about, and feel free to share your experience with me. But I am going to do an episode on this in the coming weeks. And I will also talk about what is known as a communal narcissist, or the good narcissist. So you might have heard of these terms, or you might have experienced, you might have seen your mother being like this incredible human that just goes out and does all this good for others. And again, it always goes back to, is it about others or is it about hers? herself and her discomfort. So again, we're gonna talk about this in the future. So these other topics are going to deepen this conversation about a narcissistic mother and this empathy that sometimes she seems to have. But the bottom line, as I said, is that ultimately, when you notice this sort of out of character, maybe sometimes, or that they feel like manifestations of somehow a proof that there's empathy there somewhere, observe how she's going about it. Is it really truly about the other person, or is it always about her? And if you feel into it, if you observe it properly, you may notice that it's always about herself, because that's how a narcissistic mother operates. So if you have any questions on this topic, you can share that with me via emails. If you want to share your experience, also you can do that. My email address is in the description of the episode. And also in the description of the episode, there are the details of the women's circles that are still running, that are there. There's some spaces still available, and of the one-on-one program with me, if you feel called to explore that and see if that can be a support for you right now. So you can check the details in the episode. And also there is always a free guided practice, a self-love guided practice that you can access, and the link for that is also in the description of the episode. So yeah, go and have a look at that. And with that, I'm gonna wish you a wonderful week. Lots of love. Bye for now.